Tell us the proverb, Sitting.
The proverb is from the country of Sierra Leone. A fish has nothing to do with the raincoat. That's what it says in the English language. Okay. Now, in Creole, fish no get nothing for do with raincoat.
Do?
Yes. Bring ugali. Sisi's about to start dancing raga.
For me, when the fish start disturbing us with so many patterns, we just eat it. Then we forget about it.
That's it. Whether it has a raincoat,
Whether it's in water.
been rained on.
It will go with ugali.
Those are details. Professor Fred Ogola and Wakili Bernard Odero are in the studio. From here, they're going to court. That's what they say. And they're going to file a petition challenging the legality of the Hustler Fund. Among the issues that they have with the Hustler Fund is, number one, the Hustler Fund, according to the regulations establishing the Hustler Fund, there should be a board and then an administrator of the fund in form of a secretariat. And the basic argument here is no board has been constituted and gazetted to run the Hustler Fund, number one. No secretariat. There's no CEO who's been appointed to run the Hustler Fund, number two. That board then brings in the governance issues about the Hustler Fund. That board is the one that determines, working with the secretariat, on which bank accounts to be opened, determine how the funds shall be disbursed, to determine very many other things, and also to look at, so these are the aspects we're talking about, savings. They also will come up with a policy on these savings. Number two, you've talked about the legality of the money that has been allocated to the fund. Where it's coming from, there was no appropriation budget passed by Parliament with regards to this particular fund. Is it possible for this fund to actually be getting money from another source that has not directly been appropriated by Parliament?
It is supposed to be explained. The source must be explained. Because if, let's assume the source is a loan. It's a loan to the taxpayer. The taxpayer must know their financial obligations. They must know in advance that my government is actually taking a loan to give me back as a loan. The source must be explained.
If money leaves the exchequer, it must
be accounted to the last shilling.
That's why the budget has to be there.
Yes.
And that's why the budget must be approved.
Yes.
So that you understand what this money is intended for and you know the limits of the amount.
Yes.
And so when the Auditor General comes in, now this is me thinking, they look at the budget, they look at what's intended for and say, okay, this is what they said they are going to do. This is how they're going to spend it.
Yes.
And if they haven't, he says, no, this thing you've spent here was not in the plan that you
Another
had.
question that will be asked,
Yes.
was it approved by the people? Approval by the people is through Parliament.
As you look at the intricacies of all of this, do you get the feeling that what we are seeing now is not what was planned for?
If you just take the words of what was promised, if it was free money, a grant, that is what was promised. But then the narrative changed. Hakuna pesa ya bure. It is very true. Hakuna pesa ya bure.
It's a fact.
It's a fact.
No
Hakuna
free
pesa ya bure. Nothing comes for free. But again, don't spend money like you got it for free. Kenyans have worked for this amount. I wish one day you walk to town in the evening and you see how the Kanjos harass the hustlers there to get the coin to the exchequer.
Okay, that conversation requires its own, because the so-called security and administrative enforcement officers that we refer to as Kanjo are some of the most oppressive group of people you can actually ever come across. There is no individual who works within the city who does not complain about how they go about their business.
Yes.
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
Yes. And if we don't watch out on this, because there is the enforcement issue on the persons that don't pay. If you look at the amount that you're given and the fine that you're possibly going to face in terms of if you don't pay the amounts, it's not zero. You're told it's not zero. You are told it will be paid from the funds that you've saved somewhere. And what? Once the fund gets bigger, to $1 billion, somebody will just press the button and close the fund.
So those are our concerns, and they are very legitimate concerns. It is where there is no entity. Who is the entity? Even in public finance, there is something called entity concept. Yes. Who is lending you? Who is saving your money? Who is holding your money in pension? Who is holding this money in trust? Because you can't say, I will go to the government. No, the government it's a big thing. That's why there are agencies, there are state departments, there are ministries, and you can't go to the cabinet secretary. Do you know that even sending a letter to be accepted by a CS, a letter, I try, it's hard. What's the procedure? Even there's a time I want to send a letter to a cabinet secretary. I even gave G4S. Later they called me and told me, Fred, come back for your letter because we are unable to deliver it through a channel. So how will you reach these people? And those are some of the things. That's why even in law, they'll tell you, where is your physical address? That physical address requires, where will we find you if we are looking for you? So we agree that the fund has got what is called a good intention. In fact, the thinking behind it could have been noble. But just like all noble initiatives, they must work. So there's an operational risk. Forget about it. Also, there's a governance risk, compliance risk. Eric, don't you want a fund that after His Excellency the President leaves office after 5 years, after 10 years, or whatever years he will get, isn't it? Someone will come in and don't have to shut it down. It is sustainable that every Kenyan, your child, myself, will be knowing that in case things don't go very well, I can access this money to advance myself in terms of business, career, and the rest. We want something sustainable. Then, as I told you before, there is more coming. The MSC, the microfinance, the micro medium enterprises are coming. The SMEs are coming. Before they come in, why don't we get this right? I guess this was a period to ensure they work well. So our injunction here is to make us reflect and get it right, not to stop Kenyans from getting money or something. And then, of course, the other thing, which is, I said practically, where would this money make most sense, if you ask me? Are we putting this money where it is most risky? Or this money could be elsewhere? Then thirdly, have other funds failed? What have been the failure of these funds? Are we learning a lesson? We put a case a little bit in court by saying some funds have failed before and they had XYZ signs. And these signs are very clear. Like you notice that you're going to lose before you start a match. Like when you begin a match, like last time I was debating in KTN, she came, I told her, hey, you look so prepared. And I didn't win the debate because I could see somehow in the beginning that I was debating with the KTN Standard Media, and I was alone from start. So I said, this is a battle of loss before it begins. And in strategy, we believe that a war is won before the war begins, and Hustler Fund has sunk before it begins. But we have a chance to rectify it. Don't worry about the money which has been disbursed already. Don't worry about what has happened. We can correct it. The only thing is that knowing that it's wrong and continues wrong. Let me tell you, Eric, changing in your mind does not mean you have a bad judgment. Changing your mind about few issues means you learn, meaning you can be able to listen. And if we don't change our mind now, it will be too late.
But isn't this all coming from the fact that just what, Wakili is saying, that the promise of what was supposed to be, it has now morphed into something totally different. How do you retract on something that is today what was not originally intentioned for it to be? How do you even start to say, okay, well, let's go to court and fix it? And that was not my intention from the beginning at all. How do I fix something that I didn't intend for it to be what it is today?
When we go to court, the court has two options. One, stop everything now and let the parties concerned correct what needs to be corrected. Like the BBI, the court did not say it was a bad thing. The court said it did not follow the correct procedure. So the parties were sent back to go and rectify that which they had fallen short of. The Hustler Fund, or the regulations upon which it is pegged on, do not operate in a vacuum. As you realize, it will be traversing to other areas, like it or not, legally or by interaction. It will be traversing with the banking sector.
Yep.
Therefore, there'll need to be a change in the Banking Act. It will be traversing with the pension schemes. There needs to be a change
The
or
RBA
amendments in those particular areas. So making laws are not things that are done in a day. They're not done in a day, and there is no hurry. I believe if the president performs, which I believe and I pray that he will perform, the people will give him another chance to serve them. But again, let's start by having things done right from the beginning. If we have respect for the law at the top, then automatically those down there will follow suit.
You know, the questions that you're raising today have been raised before, and they make absolute sense, right? It's obvious that those in government, knowing what needed to be done, published draft regulations to the PFM Act to establish the fund. They went through the country and spent money and resources in getting public views on this. With that, they amended it and took to Parliament. Parliament debated it. Parliament passed it. They knew what needed to happen. So the question then comes, so if you already know what needs to happen, why then do you launch the fund without having appointed a chairperson of the board? The president must have sat and asked Njuguna Ndung'u, what do I need to do? He must have been told, establish a board. And will give you, the president, the leeway to appoint a chairperson. The president is not told all these chairpersons. The only thing is the qualifications of the person who becomes a chairperson and a CEO and the board members. So the president has leeway to appoint Professor Ogola today as chairman of the board and gazette him today, and tomorrow the board will be in effect. Why has the president not done that? Why has the CS for MSMEs, Chelugui, not appointed the two persons that he's supposed to? Why is this thing not in place?
The answer,
why has the...
that's our concern. Is it a deliberate?
Is it deliberate?
It is deliberate so that something goes wrong. Is it set up to fail? You know, Eric, there are some things you set up to fail and you know what you are gaining. And that's why we're asking, who is the real hustler? Is it the people who eat from the 50 billion or the hustler who needs money there? You know, those people are saying they have taken 600, they have taken 700. That is a small thing. But a hustler will take home $1 billion from the 50 billion if there is no governance mechanism. So the question should go to the president. If you know the right thing, the act is there. Why don't you follow it? Are you following it? Are you not doing that so that you can create a loophole so that people can benefit? Those are the questions we are raising.
And maybe, let's assume everyone here just took 500 bob. And we left. What percentage is being left in the account? I think it's
2.5%, is it?
2.5. That will give us some amount. A sixth borrower will not borrow the money that is there already. A sixth borrower will borrow what we've left. My good teacher calls it the velocity of money. So that there is no money. I'm suspecting from where I sit. I'm suspecting there is no money.
That no money has actually been
there is no money anywhere.
The exchequer.
But that's
they are
what
just
Stu's point.
Computer figures. You understand?
But people are receiving money.
If you receive figures, you transfer figures. It's like crypto.
Until you start paying, it doesn't become money.
Yes, it's like crypto. And if you look at it, the money never leaves the phone. Because you borrow, the government has already taken its part. You withdraw if it's from Safaricom, you withdraw at a fee. What do you have? You'd rather use it to pay through a pay bill system. But then, that notwithstanding, as a lawyer, what I'm looking at is, was the process followed?
In fact, now you're discussing about the viability of this money. I have to tell you something here. That if you discuss the viability of this money, it is the most sickening thing because it raises the cost of capital. As a scholar, we've done research and found that the people who don't know how to use their money most is the poor. That's why you think that when you go to a market and buy a sachet of salt, where the package of that salt it constitutes 70% of the cost of the entire salt. So the salt itself you're buying is 30% of your total cost. So the Hustler Fund makes it a very expensive means of financing a business because we have three costs in business. Cost of goods sold, what you have used to purchase a good. Yeah. The second one is operating cost, logistics, transport, salaries, whatever, rent, whatever. Yeah. Then the last cost is cost of capital. What does it cost you to raise the capital to start a business? So if cost of capital is 60% of your total cost, Eric, it's difficult to run a viable business like that. That's why I was trying to say, if we ask our question, what problem are we trying to solve? We want income for people. So it's an income program, isn't it? Why don't we give the guy who has capacity, has a management, has a process, to be able to invest that money, create jobs, so that a Kenyan outside there who has no jobs can come and work for you, and we can create that all these 32.6 million unemployed Kenyans can have a disposable income of 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 per month, isn't it? Do you know how this economy can grow? It can boomerang. But when you give people who are eating, if you come from this Hustler Fund, you have taken 50,000 shillings and you are walking home, then you discover, you reach home, you find your child has been chased for school fees because education is not totally free. You reach home, your mom is sick, isn't it? Will you tell them that you want to put the money in business? You reach home, yourself, you are hurt. So you'll be putting money in consumption still. So those are not the really target people to do investment. And if we just look at the purpose, what are we trying to solve? I am sure if the president goes straight out and say, guys, I've thought through Hustler Fund and I discover I want to do it this way, I'm telling you, if he gives us what this money will do for us, if done differently, we shall argue the president. We shall say, only a clever man changes their mind because a fool doesn't. Because there's a saying in Kikuyu which says that the one who gets lost never meets a friend. You walk on the way, a friend tells you, here, you are going the wrong direction, you are going to hell. They say, guys, I know where I'm going. But I'm sure the president, with this discussion we are having, and now with the injunction in court today, may give some point of reflection and call his team and say, guys, is it that Ulinda Ugatuzi is wrong or we are wrong? And whom can we bring to ask? Maybe Wakili Bernard, that's the time they'll call you and you can go and tell them, this is the route to Hustler Fund success. But this route is the route to losslessness. And also I just have to acknowledge that the former professor of University of USIU, Professor Joseph Ngala, has just asked his questions here. And his question is that why are we not deploying the best and brightest in thinking through how we execute national policies? I'm sure that's not me to answer. Because he can see wisdom in the room and is wondering why maybe Wakili Bernard, who is a legal expert, a governance expert, why are we not deploying our best and brightest to achieve the best?
And let me, if you look at any suit or any case that is brought against the government, it's normally brought in the name of the Attorney General. It is assumed that the Attorney General should be advising the President. In this instance, we've had instances where previous Attorney Generals have failed the government, giving bogus advice. Bogus advice. You understand? So now we are hoping that this one will start with a difference. It is not a good start, but we are hoping that there will be change. If you ask me, the Hustler Fund is trying to reinvent what in a tax school we call the Robin Hood effect. Where you use the Robin Hood effect, how basically, if you look at the history of tax and why you are taxed today, it's stealing from the rich, giving to the poor what we call redistribution of wealth. But now, in this instance, we are stealing from the poor, giving to the rich. You understand?
Pause. How are we stealing from the poor and giving to the rich?
Creating a system where everyone is dependent on loan is creating slavery. That's why African nations can never succeed. And whoever feeds you decides what you do. You understand?
If that is the case, then we would argue that the richest countries on this planet are slavery institutions, slavery countries, because many of these countries have, the citizens of this country live on debt.
City, the richest country by PPP figures is China,
Yes.
followed by the US.
Yes.
US is a credit economy.
Yes, it is.
China is a very savings economy.
Yes.
Yes, as is Japan.
Yes, as
As
Japan.
are the Asian countries.
Yeah, actually,
Yes.
the top four, Europe is out because Europe went the route of credit. There is no single country in top four in terms of PPP numbers globally. We don't want to walk a route we have seen because a good student in strategy must be good in history. History has told us that's not the route to walk. America was a superpower. They are now losing it because they went credit. China has taken another route. That's why they are now making up. Japan is moving also in that direction. Singapore, though a small country, is also moving in that direction. So we cannot walk a direction we have seen. And Eric, if you, City, if you borrow
While you're at
money,
it, include Ndu also.
Yes.
if
Thank
you
you very
borrow
much.
money, this is Kenyans, let me tell you the truth. If you borrow money from the bank, you stop working for yourself, you start working for the bank. What wakes you up in the morning is the bank. So I can tell you, Kenyans who are borrowing money, you are not employees of the companies where you work. You are employees of the bank because you work every day to repay. So if you borrow money from Hustler Fund to start a business, for a long time you'll work in Hustler Fund. But what I'm trying to say in short, credit is not the way to go. We need to build savings, which is the idea here. The only problem again, which is in terms of viability, if you borrow money to save, while the interest rate you're paying to the Hustler Fund is higher than the interest you're being paid on your savings, what are you doing?
But does then not whatever it is that you have saved, instead of increasing in value, lose its value? So then one has to ask, of what use is this saving in these financial institutions
And
when its value is constantly being lost?
Yeah, pension bwana. It's 27 minutes to 9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a break.
Yes.
And after the break, we ask the people. So you've heard from Wakili and from Professor. Do you agree with them? Are they making sense? They say there are very many illegalities in this Hustlers Fund. They will be going to court today seeking an injunction to, first of all, declare it illegal. The first thing that you want is to stop it first,
Yes.
pending determination of this case.
Stop
Yes.
it fast. And maybe so that because Kenyans are reactive,
Yes.
we are telling the court also for those who've taken the funds, nothing should happen to them. They should just consume the funds.
So to copy pesa sahi.
Awaiting.
And
What-
no one should jail them until this court.
Yes, so that you're not forced to pay.
Yeah.
No one
Everything
will
should
jail
stop.
you.
Charles Daniel says, you're holding the gentleman for long. Let them go to court, buana. 2747 0719 012 600. After the break, we want to hear from you. Do you agree with the two gentlemen? Is this, there are questions to be asked of this Hustler Fund?
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Let's hear from the people. Amani in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Ndu. Good morning, CT.
Good morning, Amani.
Apologies to Ndu and CT because last time I called, I wasn't able to say good morning to you because I was almost time barred.
You did
So
like
no
that.
disrespect meant. Yes, I did, imagine.
Forgive you.
It's all right.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, about the fund, for one, I think it's a brilliant idea. It goes out of the normal box of the way of thinking about finance and how to finance people, especially at the lower level. So I have two questions to the two gentlemen there, and that is, you're talking about discrimination, and there's positive and negative discrimination. For instance, you have the Uwezo Fund, which targets women and youth. I haven't seen you or heard you talk about that in terms of taking it to court. All right. We have, let's say, government hospitals. Yeah, they are competing with other sort of private hospitals simply because the private hospitals are not able to cater for the greater population that needs those services. And so I would put this fund, the Hustler Fund, in that category, that as much as we have micro enterprises and financial institutions, they are not able to cater fully for the greater population, which never meets their criteria or their qualification to access that kind of money. Again, in education, we have the same positive discrimination. The government is competing with private enterprise who are into education, but they cannot meet all the demands of the population, the greater population of our country. So to call that as though something wicked and evil and contrary to justice, this is not acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah, they need to have a better argument than that.
Okay. Umesikia.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
Amani.
you.
They will respond. Peter in Roiro, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Okay, I will disagree with Amani because the points that the gentlemen are making are legitimate. You know, government is not there to compete with the private sector in terms of having a fund. Even in advanced countries, if you want to help the electorate, you normally use other channels to be able to channel government money, so that it has some steps of accountability to it. My views about the Hustler Fund is that it's a good idea, but the implementation is wrong, and it actually smacks of probably nefarious activities, money laundering, and all manner of ills that could be peddled through it. It is important to distinguish between the other funds that have been there because they had the necessary structures that are accountable. Even the old funds like the AFC and other funds that used to be there in the 70s and the 60s, the settlement fund, for instance, you know, that settled former Mamo fighters. It was all done through a system that was accountable and had really been created. So I support what they're doing, and I think it's important that we get things right first before we implement. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Zachary in Kakamega.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, Kakamega is fine. I had an observation, or rather 4 of them to make. I feel this Hustler Financial Inclusion Fund was a political decision which was hurriedly implemented due to some pressure from somewhere we don't know. And then number 2, about the petition that they're going to present, they can as well observe that in those regulations, we are not being told who the accounting officer for those funds is. So in addition to it not having a board, a secretariat, that is a board that is gazetted, we still don't know who the accounting officer is. Then I feel when the fund is to be implemented, there should be a criteria of determining that the people who receive it are actually in business. There are people like, I have a limit of 3,000. I don't do any business. So I don't know what 3,000 can start a business, what business it can start. And then finally, I was just thinking aloud. Now that the government wants me to send pay bills for drought, if I take these 3,000 and send there, will I still be paying? Have a good day.
Zachary, thank you. Gerald, Gerald, where are you? You're in America.
Yes, sir, Mr. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Professor Gerald Olget is me. I know you remember me from back in Yana.
Yes, Jerry.
But yes, sir, that's me.
Yes.
This is your guy now. He's
Yes.
in the States.
Yes.
Where are you in America, Gerald?
I'm in Maryland.
You're right.
Yeah.
So tell us, what are your thoughts on
my
what the
contribution
gentleman
to it? Oh, my thoughts are, I mean, if I could send an escort to drag them to the court immediately, I would, because honestly, the Hustler Fund is something that looks good from far, but is far from good because, in my opinion, when you look at the source of the funds, how they're coming, how they're being distributed, and one thing that I'm not sure I had if the lawyer mentioned or professor mentioned about the tax that's involved with this, if there is any, because for me as a businessman, I don't see how money would come out for free, especially from the government, who is most income generation comes from tax, to give out money of whatever amount for whatever specific period, for whatever specific business they're going to do, it coming back obviously without enough interest for it to regain back. And just like has been said, I mean, if you're going to give me a limit of 3,000 and I'm trying to run a business as an SME, what are we doing and how are we assuring that this is being done right and the refundable part of it? Because my thought on this is unfortunately doomed to fail, but the taxpayer, the honest taxpayer, is the one who's going to come back and start paying it back, not the one who's going to spend the money the wrong way.
Points made. Thank you, Gerald. Evans in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Very well.
Okay. I have three things with respect to this fund. First, this fund, it is a political thing. That is why you see there are a lot of issues around it. Because all the funds, if you look at the ways of fund, the youth fund, they have got structures. The regulations are presented to public participation and taken through parliament. The MPs approve those regulations and therefore anchored on structure. The Hustler Fund does not have similar structure. Where the regulations, where were they passed? These are critical questions. Were they to parliament for parliamentary approval? I have seen people quoting the Public Finance Management Act that gives the minister, the cabinet secretary for treasury, the authority to appropriate funds. And they are doing it, they are reading that law very skewedly to fit into their political agenda. So the tragedy is the government is trying to compete with banks by providing a financial commodity that should be managed by banks. The way it is structured today, actually, it is like they are running it like a bank, which should not be the case. So the whole thing is, it is a pyramid scheme that will crumble because it is not structurally viable. Where is the secretariat? Where is the board? We see that the savings are coming up, running into millions of shillings. How are these savings being managed? Who is managing the savings? If you want to pull out and access your savings, how do you get your savings? So we must ask ourselves very, very serious question about the word, about the management of this fund. It is illegal because it has got no structure. And I agree with the advocate, the lawyer there. Any serious court will do what will nullify this. Look at what the Supreme Court said about any legislation that talks about financial management. It has to go to the Senate. Did Parliament take this bill, the regulation, to the Senate for concurrence? So we must stop beating around the bush. The truth is, it is a political fund that is created to hoodwink ordinary citizens. It is going to collapse unless we address the legal structure.
Thank you, Evans.
So much.
Asante. Let's respond to those ones so far.
I think on the issue of calling it discriminatory, that is not what we are taking to court. We're just trying to see, there must be the moral of the thing. If you look at the objective there, it doesn't look like there should be something like trying to see, but the issue of trying to make the structure exclude certain people of a certain faith, I don't think there's any fund that has ever done that. You should leave it open there. And by the very structure and the policy around it, it actually does do that. And of course, Uwezo Fund was set up for that very deliberate thing. Even we see banks even setting up a fund that can be borrowed only by women. So that's allowed. Youth also the same. So we have all this already. Which is this one to do? All hustlers, there are a way on which is being executed where some hustlers cannot access it, like some people certain faith. So I see some bit of discrimination there. There's the second thing, these ones I agree with them. For example, the issues of, they have just confirmed what we have stated. And now even the concern like we are raised by Wakili here that maybe there's no money, even do rest it. They are looking for a way actually to create that money by cheating people. We have set up the 50 billion. So we're asking from where revenue allocations, the budget controller, let them tell us it moved from where to where. And that's where we are raising a concern that this should be something that is not really right. The most important thing is that it is set up by design to fail, set to fail. And this is deliberate. And of course, there could be avenues of washing money also. Because if we don't know where this money is coming from, some dirty money can come through that fund and then being lent out to Kenya, and somebody can clean their money. So we are seeing avenues on which anything can go wrong.
Anything can happen.
And if you go to Murphy's Law, if anything can happen, it will.
If anything can go wrong.
Yes, it will.
Everything can go wrong, will go wrong. Wakili, you've taken a couple of notes from the calls.
I want to start with the first caller who tackled the issue of discrimination. This Hustler Fund is discriminatory majorly in two ways. One, Kenya, we've enjoyed a lot of peace. Probably since the time I was born, the only time I saw some instability in Kenya was in 2007, 2008, post-election. So we really have not tested what instability of a nation feels. But if you read widely, class war has been the major source of instability around the world.
Even in what are developed countries today.
Yes.
If you look at the whole feudal system.
Around the world.
Yeah.
Now, the Hustler Fund discriminates. It says, and if you look at the statement by our deputy president, who respectfully, I want to ask sometimes to kind of shut it off, because now he's a leader for all. You understand? He's not a leader for those who voted. He's not a leader for those who voted for or against.
He's the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya.
Of the Republic of Kenya, for the rich and for the poor. Now, look at it like this. You're giving someone 500 shillings to go start. You can only start a solo business, maybe of smokies, because even during the launching, they talked of smokies and the rest. What is the aim? The aim is to give people loans and have them pay. If someone can take $1 million, let them take $1 million and pay it back. In fact, we are more safer with formal institutions that have been registered than people taking loans via phones. I heard of a joke of nitumie kwa hii ile nyingine iko na fuliza.
Wakili, what you're just doing by saying all those things is you're actually making sense for the fund.
Yes.
Financial inclusion. It is for those that have previously been excluded
from these systems that
from accessing capital.
But
and you're saying we are safer when we are in that status quo.
I'm telling you, the main thing with any other fund and any other banking institution, that's why we have a depository fund for anyone that wants to run any money lending and depositing scheme. Structures. Governments are run by structures. The moment we get the structures off the hook, like we were to put the Biblia down and get unga to some level, the moment we get the structures off the hook, that's the beginning of trouble.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is also the issue of religion. Yeah, you can't assume all Muslims who don't believe in interest on loan are people who are not hustlers. Go to Isili.
Have you spoken to members of the Muslim faith?
Yes.
And they've raised concern about this?
Yes.
Have they raised concern about other products in the market?
No, because if you look at our banking system, Muslims would bank with a particular bank. Look at Isili. How much runs in Isili alone? If the Hustler Fund was to work and it be expounded to everyone, provided you can pay, because the real issue here is, can you pay? If you can pay, discrimination can be done on basis of payment.
Wakili, Muslims in this country do not exclusively bank with Sharia-compliant products.
Majority. When I say they bank with majority they do.
You know,
Sharia compliant products were introduced in this country just less than
by
10
the
years
way,
ago.
Well, Wakili, on that one, we're going to challenge you and ask you if you have data to support what you're saying.
I have.
And these may be murky waters. So tuache hiyo.
Tuendelee. Swali lingine.
Yes.
Okay.
Other concerns raised by the callers.
There was a concern about the accounting officer. It doesn't have. I think I raised that.
Yes.
There was also a concern about whether you can opt out. We've not been told how you can opt out. Plus another question we are asking, do you have a say on whether or not you want to save?
And in fact,
Because you might want...
You might want just the loan.
You might want the
minus
loan, but you're not interested in the
Yes,
saving bit.
you're not
of
even
the loan.
interested in pension.
You own the cow minus the tail.
Yes.
on that point, also,
hide.
on that point, also, there is something I think is not really legal, but it is something in good faith that exploiting people's lack of knowledge. Remember that Brexit took place because majority of the voters who voted don't have a passport, so they didn't see the need of having EU. They were having jobs that did not require a degree, so they didn't see the need of EU. That statistics are
And
there.
they didn't even need to leave their country.
Yes, so why, if you are telling someone to vote against common passport in East African community, someone who can travel from my village in Ugenya to Nairobi, what bother do they have to do with going to Kampala or going to DRC Congo? So the way that Hustler Fund has been done, it can manipulate people who don't know, because you enter and you don't know how to get out. And they don't know that for you went to school, Eric, and you are taught about entry strategy and exit strategy. So if you enter this, it's a marriage. This is a marriage. Because only marriage, there is no exit clause. So do you want to be a hustler forever? Or we want to move people from hustler and then they graduate into some other thing? And if you want to graduate, you're being told you can't graduate. Can you enter a college where there's no closing date and there's no end of year? I think these are the challenges we are raising here, and there should be clarity. Maybe court can call those officers we have mentioned there as interested parties, and they can explain to Kenyans. What we want is that Kenyans, we should enter into an agreement where there's no information asymmetry, so that everyone knows what they're standing for. And in fact, it's not just posing so the government does not implement. It's also posing it so that those of us who want to enter the Hustler Fund can also get clarity on what are we signing for.
So it's all about creating awareness for everybody.
It's also about knowing what is involved.
Okay.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this morning. You've heard the voice of the people. As you go to court, bear that in mind, and let's see what happens in court. All the best.
Shortly by noon, I think we should be knowing what the judge wants to say.
Okay.
We are hoping.
By noon today.
Yes.
You're going to the Milimani Law Courts.
Yes.
We are going right now. Don't think we're Kenyans. I'm Fred Ogola. There's only one thing about Fred Ogola. What you see is what you get. There's nothing else.
Okay.
Yes.
Fred Ogola is the leader of Operation Linda Ugatuzi. He's also an expert on governance, on strategy. He's a professor at the Strathmore University in Nairobi. Bernard Odero is a constitutional and tax law expert. He's been trained on tax by the Kenya Revenue Authority School of Tax.
A very good score.
A very good one, eh? Kasra?
Yes.
Okay. We'll take your word for it.
Yes.
So the man knows a thing or two about law and tax. He's also now the one who will be heading to court to file this case on behalf of Operation Linda Ugatuzi. Gentlemen, asanteni sana.